With so much happening in our community and nation that is so divided, we must take the opportunity to look back together so that we can move forward together. Register now for Justified Anger's courses, Black History for a New Day, starting in February. The course is taught by UW-Madison professors and Black community leaders with the purpose of understanding how the African American experience has shaped the world we all live in, and how allies can find roles supporting racial justice today. Learn more at justifiedanger.com. Murder for Two, anyone? Everyone's a suspect in this multi-award-winning two-person musical comedy. One actor investigates, the other plays every suspect, and both play the piano in this whip-smart, winking homage to an old-fashioned theatrical mystery. Murder for Two runs February 21st through March 2nd at the Capital City Theater Core, located on University Avenue on Madison's west side. Get tickets at capitalcitytheater.org. Today on CityCast Madison. It's so cold, but these single-digit temperatures thicken the ice that covers our lakes, which is good news for local ice fishers. But how do you stay safe while ice fishing? And how good is the fishing in Madison anyway? Well, there's one local worm slinger who is keeping track of the conditions on the lakes. Every Friday, Pat Hasburgh, owner of DNS Bait, Tackle, and Fly Shop, delivers that weekly fishing report for the Madison area. He's carrying on a 4-decade-long service that local fishers rely on. I chatted with Pat last winter to find out what newbies need to know before trying their hand at ice fishing, and how to keep track of when it's safe to get out. It's Tuesday, January 21st. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Pat, hello.
Hey, how you doing, Bianca?
I'm doing pretty well. So I think it's safe to say that you are the go-to guy when it comes to fishing reports in Madison. What are you looking for when you're deciding where or when to fish?
Well, I mean, the ice thickness is really what determines all of that. I mean, you can't go out in areas where the ice is not safe. So what you want to do is, kind of try to pay attention, watch where other anglers are already out fishing. And, that'll give you a good idea. If there's already people out there and they're not falling through the ice, that's a good sign.
But is it the only sign? I mean, if there's one or two.
It's never the only sign. The DNR, for instance, they say that there's no such thing as safe ice. And that's exactly true. I mean, you could see a truck parked out on a lake, and the ice near the shore might be a little bit sketchy. So, I encourage everyone to always use caution and always come prepared. And, there are steps you can take to be prepared in the event that you go through. But generally speaking, if you see people out on the ice and, they're not being rescued by EMS, chances are it's pretty safe.
Yeah. How deep is the ice for it to be safe?
Generally, they say at least 3 inches for foot travel and 6 inches for an ATV. You're not allowed to drive any vehicles on the ice, like trucks and cars in Dane County. But other parts around the state, it is legal. I grew up driving vehicles on the ice, and they recommend at least 12 inches of ice for vehicles. But around Madison, the ice right now ranges anywhere from about 6 inches to 11 to 12 inches, depending on where you're at. So your shallow bays, shallow areas are going to have thicker ice in that 10 to 11, 12-inch range. And then out over the big lakes, like on Lake Mendota, you're going to have 6 inches or so out there. And some folks are running ATVs out there. I'm not officially recommending it here at the shop.
Yeah. I was over on Lake Mendota the other day, and I felt like I saw a lot of pools of water that I saw a bunch of people out there, but it did make me feel like, oh, there's ducks. There are little areas where there's some breakage, I guess, in the thickness.
Sure. We did get some rain recently, and so a lot of that rain will sit on top of the ice, and that can make it appear like there's open water in areas. Other areas where you might find open water would be maybe where there's a storm sewer outfall.
Oh,
So if there's rain washing off the city streets and then it washes into the lakes, that's warmer water that melts the ice
yeah.
around those areas, and you will see ducks congregating around there. Some areas, maybe where there's a bridge that goes over a narrow spot, can cause there to be current under the ice. So
Yeah,
sometimes,
I was at Tenney Park, so like right
Mhm.
on like where the little pier is. So that makes a lot of sense. It was literally kind of some of those conditions you mentioned.
Yep. But generally, where there's still water and open larger lake areas, they freeze over pretty well. But like I said, always use caution, and use your best judgment. Just because you see somebody out on the lake, you might want to maybe see if you can figure out how they got out there, instead of just blindly walking out onto some potentially thin ice where there might be a storm sewer outfall, or maybe there's an inlet where that body of water is fed by a stream or a creek or something. Anywhere that there's current can certainly cause thin ice, but those areas are generally pretty small, and just located into those small areas around where that water comes in.
Yeah, I'm sure you've been out a bunch already this season. What kinds of fish are biting right now?
Well, all of them really. It really, when folks come in the shop and they ask what's biting, I ask them, what do you want to fish for? So if it's panfish, so bluegills, crappie, and perch, those are plentiful around Madison. We really are blessed in Madison to have a fantastic fishery for being such an urban area. And the pan fishing especially is excellent around town. So areas that hold really good panfish this time of year would be on the north side of town here, Cherokee Marsh, which is a large, shallow, wide spot in the Har River. There's good weeds in there, and it's good habitat for panfish. And probably the most popular spot in town is Monona Bay. So down there off John Nolan Drive, if you're ever driving on John Nolan and you see people off to the side by the train track,
Yeah.
they call those areas the triangles. There's a north and south triangle that's formed by the train tracks. And then behind that is Monona Bay proper. And it's always a good spot for panfish, but for whatever reason, this year has just been fantastic. I mean, it is filled with fish. Everybody that goes down there is almost guaranteed to catch fish. The Yahara Fishing Club, a local fishing club here, did a kids fishing day where they give out rods to kids and try to introduce kids into fishing. They had 300 kids come through. All the kids got fishing rods. Every single kid caught at least one fish, but many kids caught 10 fish, and all the parents had a great time. They have hot dogs and hot cocoa and all. It's really a great event that they do and gets people into fishing. But, if a bunch of kids who have never ice fished before can go somewhere and catch 10 fish in a couple hours, I mean, that's a pretty good sign that you've got a good fishery there.
A fish jamboree. I feel like that had to be full of so much joy.
Yeah.
Like catching 10 fish. Get out of here.
Yeah. All the smiles on the kids' faces. I saw a bunch of pictures, and it's priceless. On the other side of species, as far as species to catch here in town, we also have a really great walleye and northern pike fishery here in town. So, and a lot of those fish tend to be caught more on the bigger lakes. So Monona and Mendota. And you can find those fish usually not too far from shore, so accessible by foot. And what you're looking for out there is trying to find like a weed edge or a break. So where it goes from shallow water into deep water is where a lot of those fish like to congregate. And we have fantastic walleye fishing. And Lake Mendota, especially for northern pike, is managed by the DNR as a trophy pike fishery. So any pike that can be kept out of there have to be at least 40 inches. So that's a big fish, and
That's a big one, yeah.
Yeah. So that means that there's a lot of big fish around, but there's also a lot of smaller fish that don't get kept. And like I said, we really are blessed here in Madison to have such a great fishery.
Do you plan your vacations based on whether you can speak the local language? With Babbel, language no longer has to be the barrier. I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast, and I went to Mexico City a couple of years ago with my girlfriend, who's a native Spanish speaker. So I just let her do all the talking, like all of it. I adored the city. And now I'm going to go back in a couple of months, but with my college roommates, who are a bunch of middle-aged men, none of us Spanish speakers. When I was younger, I might not have been bold enough to do that, but now I'm not anxious because Babbel has me covered. Thanks to Babbel, I know how to order a taxi, how to give directions, how to order in a restaurant, all the small and useful bits of language that make international travel easier. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or whatever pace you choose. And because conversing is the key to really understanding each other in a new language, Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations, especially the sort you need while traveling. Food, how to get places. Babbel's tips and tools are inspired by the real-life stuff you actually need when communicating. With a focus on conversation, you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. So I hope I'll see you in Mexico in a couple of months. Or, as we say, espero verte en Mexico en un par de meses. So let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting CityCast listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. The app is simple. Pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Sports app today and use code FIELD and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
It is abundantly clear to me that you have this amazing voice. Like, you're so soothing to listen to. You do a fishing report online for the area every week. You get to share this sort of news all of the time with folks. So what made you want to start doing that?
DNS Bait and Tackle, and now Fly Shop, has been in business for 43 years. Here on the north side of Madison. I purchased the business in 2022. The fishing report was something that had been started by the original owners, Debbie and Steve. That's where the DNS comes from. Started a phone line where you could call in and just listen to a recording that they did every Friday. And then Gene Dellinger, who was the previous owner, kept that going. He owned the shop here for 31 years. I was a customer of the shop for the last 20 years or so. And when Gene was selling, I was kind of in a transition part of my career, I guess you'd say, and decided what the heck, might as well keep this great staple in the fishing community going. It's a really important part of the fishing community, that not only the shop here, but also the fishing reports. A lot of people rely on them. I know I did as a customer for many years. So really, I'm just keeping the tradition going, and I'm happy to do that. I've changed the format of the report. Not only do we do a phone-in line, which is, if anybody wants to call the number, it's 608-BIG-FISH. So we've had that number forever.
Yes, 608 Big Fish.
Works out pretty good that way. But also we post at DS Bait Tackle Fly Shop on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And I do a little thing on the digital side of things where I have a Google map up and I kind of walk people through different areas that I'm talking about. And I talk about the weather, and I not only talk about the Madison area, but also fishing in southern Wisconsin in general, because I know that not everybody fishes around town, and sometimes people want to get out of town, and it helps to know what's going on over maybe on the Mississippi River or the Milwaukee area. So just sort of expanded some of the depth of the report, but it's been received pretty well from folks, and thanks for the compliment on my voice.
Yeah.
I'm self-conscious about it actually, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh. Did you say you're self-conscious about it? Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm just like, I'm talking to a professional here. Like it's really nice. And I think it's so awesome to see someone, a part of the community. You benefited from the service. You said you were shopping there for 20 years, and it sounds like you didn't want the shop to go away, so you bought it?
Yeah. So, when Gene, the old owner, told me that he was selling, I sort of panicked inside wondering, what's going to happen to DNS. It didn't sound like he had any offers, and, it was sort of getting down to the wire, and we worked something out with Gene, and I think we were both happy with how things turned out. And I know the fishing community is happy to see the shop still in business. So that's very heartening. I'm not going to get rich selling people worms for the rest of my life, but it's definitely a great way to, keep the community in touch with each other. And there's worse ways to make a living than getting to BS with guys about fishing all day. So.
Oh my goodness.
I'll take it.
Yeah, and different ways to think about what being rich is, right?
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I like a good hang just like anyone else. And I love nature, and I've never done ice fishing. If someone has never tried to ice fish before and wants to get started, what tips do you generally give?
Well, I do get folks that come in the shop and say, I want to go ice fishing. And I say, great. And they say, I've never been ice fishing. Where do I do? Yeah. So I try to get them started with just a very basic setup and point them to a place like Monona Bay, where I know they'll likely catch some fish. But there are other resources. The DNR has Learn to Fish clinics that they host, and they do those periodically. So if you looked on the DNR's website about learning to fish, and they go through everything. I think it's a series of courses where it's maybe one night of like classwork and then a day on the water. And then they go and they do another thing out in class where they might teach you how to clean the fish and prepare the fish. So it's a full, harvest to cook thing. So people can really get every kind of facet of what to do out there on the ice. And those are great. And the Yahara Fishing Club too. Is a great way to learn more about fishing, joining that group and attending their meetings. They have lots of willing members that are happy to take people out and get people interested in fishing. It's really great.
Yeah. And so I don't want to make you give away any of your trade secrets. And what do you think the key is to catching fish in Madison's frozen lakes?
Patience. Patience and practice is really the best way to learn. You can't expect to go out and catch a world record fish your first time out, so people have to understand that there's a learning curve to everything, and fishing is no different. But I feel like, at least in my case, once you kind of get that bug, you want more. You might go down to Monona Bay and catch a bunch of fish your first year, and you're like, this is great, but now I want to try catching maybe walleyes or pike, or I want to venture out to, different areas around southern Wisconsin, smaller lakes or areas along the Wisconsin River, something like that. So it's really a lifetime of learning, at least in my experience. It's something that I never feel like I know enough. And, even though I work at a bait shop and people consider me some kind of expert, I'm always humbled by fish. So I don't go out and catch limits of fish or trophy fish every time. Sometimes I don't catch any fish. So that's what makes fishing interesting and a fun challenge, but most of all, a great opportunity for folks to get out and just enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah. Well, Pat, it is extremely exciting to finally get some details as a non-ice fisher about what the circumstances are out on those lakes. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been fun.
That's Pat Hasburgh, owner of DNS Bait, Tackle, and Fly Shop. He publishes his weekly fishing report every Friday on the shop site. If you want to check it out, we'll toss a link to that in our show notes. You can also call the hotline 608-BIG-FISH. In the conversation, Pat told us about last year's Kids Ice Fishing Day. Good news, this year's event is happening on Saturday. If you have a kid in your life who'd like to try ice fishing for free, bundle up and head over to Brittingham Park on Saturday, January 25th from 9 a.m. to noon. That's all for today, here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin. If you enjoyed the show, why not share this episode with someone who loves big fish? We'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, stay warm.